I am a calm and stable person. I have never shouted at or hit anyone. Brothers do not count. However, I have been punched by women. I have had drinks thrown on me and have been shouted at. Some women can be difficult. How many men have faced similar situations? Story 1. I once got slapped by a girlfriend. I didn't even break up with her. I just silently stood up, walked away, and we were no longer dating. Story 2. About 12 years ago, my ex attacked me with a knife, intending to harm me. I caught her arm mid-swing and squeezed hard enough to make her drop it. I grabbed the knife, threw it down the hall, and left the premises. The next day, I was arrested at work for battery due to the bruise on her wrist and the black eye she gave herself afterward. It was an extensive and costly legal battle after that, but my charges were eventually dropped. Story 3. I had my nose broken in a domestic violence incident once. I don't know how common this is, but several of my friends describe experiencing violence. Story 4. I have a funny story to share. I was working as a bouncer at a strip club when a drunk man attacked me while I was trying to remove him. I managed to put him on the ground and got on top of him. Suddenly, his girlfriend jumped on my back and dug her nails into my face. Out of nowhere, Whisper, a 5 feet 10 inches, 180-pound stripper with a very flat stomach, came to my rescue like a gallant knight. She grabbed the girl by her hair and landed a punch on her jaw. It was a glorious moment. I will never forget Whisper and how she saved me from having to put my hands on a woman and from getting my face scratched up even more. Not all acts of violence from women are negative. Story 5. What's worse is when they slap you and say, "What are you going to do? Hit a woman." I do not support putting my hands on women. I never have before, nor have I made a woman feel that way. However, the next person who says that will learn a valuable lesson. I do not tolerate abuse of any kind, and if that makes me a hypocrite, so be it. It's likely she won't do it to another man again. Sometimes two wrongs can lead to a right, but only in future situations. Story 6. Without going into too much detail, I am a domestic abuse survivor, and my abuser was a woman. Even though it has been nearly 20 years since I escaped, I still carry the emotional scars to this day. Story 7. My ex just told me to suck it up because I am a big guy. She couldn't even handle me yelling at her for it. Talk about someone dealing with what they can't take. This is not the reason we broke up, but I added it to the list of unacceptable behavior. Story 8. Some women do not face the same consequences as men, leading some to not realize that their actions can be classified as violence. Violent? No, I just kicked him in the groin. It was a man. It can't be violence. Story 9. Finally, she had enough and tried to slap me because I told her to calm down. I grabbed her wrist as she swung, hard enough to bring her to her knees. Then I told her to leave. After that, the verbal assaults began. That's when I used the tactic of recording her by putting my phone in her face. She left. Her next boyfriend treated her badly. Story 10. I once got drunk with a woman who was quite unpredictable. We had been seeing each other for a couple of years, and I was friends with her father before I met her. She began to speak disrespectfully about my deceased mother, so I responded by mentioning that her father was a drug addict. This enraged her, and she started hitting me in the head and face. After receiving about 15 to 20 blows, I saw red and slapped her back. She became extremely upset and called my father. He came to pick me up, we talked, he laughed, we had a few more drinks, and I never saw her again. Story 11. I have been kicked and punched on multiple occasions. I have been chased around with a knife. I have had dishes, drinks, bottles, or pretty much anything within reach thrown at me. My belongings have been damaged, and soda was dumped on my computer, ruining it. I have also had the police called twice, accusing me of domestic violence after I was attacked. Thankfully, the first time the police did not believe her because she was intoxicated and was uncooperative. Instead of arresting her, they made me leave my home in the middle of the night with nowhere to go, so I was still the one punished. At least with the second woman who tried to blame me, the police arrested her and helped me get her out of my house. She punched me in the face and started throwing things, then called the police claiming I hit her. She was in handcuffs outside before they even came and spoke to me, so I have no idea what she told them. I obtained a restraining order signed off in the middle of the night before she was even released. They served her while she was in jail. She received supervised probation and had to take a 6-month class on domestic violence. They were going to incarcerate her, but I spoke with the prosecutor to prevent that for the sake of her son. So at least in some cases, men are not instantly assumed to be the problem, and the courts take domestic violence seriously, regardless of the perpetrator's gender. Story 12. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention estimates that 1 in 3 men will be a victim of intimate partner violence in their lifetime. I have experienced this, and I know with certainty that several friends have as well. What it is not, however, is reported, nor is it extensively studied. There seems to be a belief that studying intimate partner violence committed by women against men takes resources away from protecting women. Today, I do not, in any way, associate with anyone who has become violent with another person unless it is clear legal self-defense. I have distanced myself from female friends who, when drunk, have slapped their partners or have a history of becoming violent and throwing things. I have never raised my voice or my hand to a woman, and I will not associate with anyone who does. Story 13. My ex attacked me with a butcher knife once. Luckily, it was a pathetic attempt on my life, and I handled it quickly. I probably should have called the police, but I didn't. We weren't in a healthy relationship. I got treatment, but she didn't. I think a significant issue in society is that women can be just as violent and abusive as men, but we aren't allowed to talk about it because that makes us seem less feminine or something equally misguided. Story 14. This was years ago, but I had an ex tell me to close my eyes. As I sat on the sofa with my eyes closed, I heard a scraping sound that alarmed me enough to peek through one slightly opened eyelid, only to see my ex lifting my large clay vase from the fireplace and walking toward me, raising it over her head to smash it on my head. I jumped up and grabbed her wrists, holding them tightly to put a stop to the attempted assault, and she freaked out. This was a huge vase that was heavy and thick enough that it likely would have crushed my skull had she completed her attack. Despite her being the one who tried to attack me, she threatened to call the police and a day later went to get a restraining order and sent pictures of her red and lightly bruised wrists from where I gripped her as I stopped her from crushing my skull. She got her restraining orders, and I lost a large number of our mutual friends who labeled me a domestic abuser. She later mocked me, saying I should learn my lesson that the police and our friends would always believe her, not me. I left after that, but the damage was done. Her reason for trying to smash the vase over my head? She was accusing me of lying about finding one of her friends attractive. One of her friends had spent a lot of time chatting with me at one of our gatherings. We were talking training strategies, so we had a great discussion. Yes, her friend was fairly attractive, nothing special, and not the reason I was speaking with her. When my ex confronted me, I told her I was not into her, nor was I talking to her for any ulterior motive. When she asked me if I thought her friend was hot, I said no. I told the truth, stating she wasn't ugly either, just a mildly above average woman, but not someone I would have even dated if I were single. She called me a liar and accused me of wanting to sleep with her. This was a single conversation in a room with about 17 people in it, including my ex being less than 10 feet away. Apparently, that was all it took to anger her so much that she stewed over it for 3 to 4 days before finally deciding to attack. Story 15. I dated a woman like this for 3 years. I still remember the first night she hit me in the face, breaking my glasses and causing a gash under my eye. It was completely random. Things only escalated from there. I had glasses of water thrown at me, a lamp broken over my head, and a MacBook thrown at me. When arguments occurred, they were always intense, with her screaming, yelling, and becoming violent. Throughout the relationship, she painted a picture to her father that I was abusive, and I only lived up to that narrative when one night she attacked me, and I pushed her to the floor while trying to restrain her. She ended up fracturing her arm, which she had broken years earlier. I never heard the end of it from her or her father. My side of the story was never shared, and I'm sure everyone around us after the relationship ended heard how abusive I was. Before her, I had never even touched a woman in self-defense or screamed at one. It's easy for me to identify the common denominator, but people tend to believe the perspective of the charming narcissist over that of a man. Story 16. Women are more likely to engage in physical altercations when they believe they will not face negative consequences. You are a safe target. Story 17. My late wife was verbally abusive but not physically. Incidents like yelling at me for hours and getting in my face were common. I dealt with that for years. It is difficult to reconcile in my mind because she had serious mental health and addiction struggles but refused to confront them. She died by suicide last year. I find myself missing the person she was before her mental health issues took over, while also feeling relieved to feel safe every day. Story 18. I have been unexpectedly attacked by 3 women. No men have ever attacked me. I have been in a few fights. Women may strike and then flee, and everyone tends to defend them. Story 19. I guess for a lot of people, it's become the norm to think that when men are violent, it's obviously bad, but people don't seem to take women's violence as seriously because they're not as strong. If it happens to a man, it's often perceived that he can better handle the hit because he's being punched by someone weaker than him. I've experienced women acting violently towards me over trivial matters. When I was 14, I threw a paper airplane while bored at school, and it accidentally hit a girl on the forehead. She immediately slapped me before I could say anything. That was a strange experience because she was otherwise very kind and friendly, so it was disillusioning to see someone I liked react with violence instead of trying to talk it out. I also had a girl at a bar try to punch me because I wouldn't buy her friends a round of drinks. I caught her hand, and she then started flailing her other arm, which the bartender noticed, and eventually, she was kicked out. Story 20. I date Latina women. I have been punched in my sleep. My drywall was destroyed, and things were thrown through windows. One person even crashed my truck into a light pole. Basically, you just walk away because if you do anything to restrain them, stop them, or even defend yourself, and the police come, you go to jail every time. Story 21. I saw a man today whom I hadn't seen in 25 years. The last time we met, he was regularly abused by his wife. I'm really glad to hear he separated from her 24 years ago and is now living a happy life. At that time, the police wouldn't take the situation seriously because he looked intimidating and she was small, even when she attacked him with a knife and cut his throat. Fortunately, he was not seriously injured. Violence has always been a concern, but society has not always recognized that fact. Story 22. I was hit playfully by my ex and also by a coworker. I wouldn't say they were violent by nature, but they thought it was acceptable because I am a guy. By hitting, I mean a punch on the shoulder, nothing hard or hurtful, but a punch nonetheless. Nothing bad came of it. When I told my ex not to do it again, she apologized and never did. I had to elaborate with the coworker because she was a keyboard warrior who confused real life with online echo chambers at the time. She's much milder now and a pretty cool person. Interestingly, she's on better terms with me and my other male coworkers than most of the other women on the team, now that I think of it. This is an example of how, in some cases, the resolution can be positive, where people ended up learning something. Both my ex and the coworker learned why hitting a guy, even if they thought it was playful, is not acceptable. Or they still do it. Just not with me. In that case, I may be a bit naive, but at least they respected my stance. Story 23. I knew someone who got her child's father hooked on heroin as part of a strategy to control and manipulate him. He later died of an overdose. I truly feel sorry for those children. Story 24. I don't know a single guy who doesn't have an insane story about how one of his exes was actually crazy and tried to harm him. Every guy has at least one crazy ex. In my case, one of my exes tried to stab me because she thought I was cheating. But when I ask my female friends, there are no similar stories, no attempted murder, nothing. Story 25. I figured everyone has to get away from them as quickly as possible because they will only escalate, and you cannot protect yourself. Story 26. Are you talking about a one-time instance of physical abuse, or one that is more ongoing? If you're referring to a one-time event, then yes, I have been abused by my wife. After an argument while taking items to the car for a family trip, she kicked me in the back, causing me to go face first into a brick wall. Once the car was packed and everyone was inside, I turned on the ignition, then paused. I realized something needed to be done. I turned off the car and told the family to wait while I took some time to think. I went inside the house, had a coffee, and considered my options. 10 minutes later, I returned and asked my wife to come out of the car to talk away from the kids. I threatened divorce, as I would not tolerate living in an abusive relationship. I did not care how much pain it would cause. Suffice it to say, it was an awkward trip. Things are much better now. There are times you need to know when to draw the line and set the tone in the relationship. Story 27. I don't let anyone hit me, whether a woman or a man. If you can deliver pain, you can collect it. My mother was very abusive and liked to kick and slap me. When I was 16, she kicked me in the back while I was sitting on the ground. I stood up and told her, "If you ever touch me again, I will knock you out. I will never start a fight, but if someone punches me, I will punch back." Story 28. One of them I dated out of fear until I moved away several months later. She actually poked me with her switchblade. I hate to say stabbed because the blade did not go all the way in, but it did draw blood. When I told her I was too sick to be intimate, I responded, "Did you actually think that stabbing me would make me feel better and put me in the mood? I was in high school, so I don't know if it really counts." My ex-fiancé. It wasn't often. It was only a few times, and every single time it resulted in futility. She was 5 feet 2 inches and 105 pounds. I was 6 feet and 350 pounds. I would usually let her hit me 2 or 3 times before I caught her wrist and just held it. I didn't squeeze or twist to try and hurt her. I just held it to prevent her from hitting me. Once I said to her, "Okay, is it my turn now?" She asked what I meant, and I replied, "It appears you want to play the punching game. Is it my turn now?" She stopped. I was actually kind of surprised she didn't challenge me on this because she knew I had never hit a woman and never would. One time she tried to throw a bicycle at me. I simply grabbed the frame and told her to let go. She was off balance, and I repeatedly told her to let go, but she refused. When I finally released my grip, she fell down and dropped the bicycle on top of herself. Another time, she tried to slam the door on me as I was walking out of the bedroom. I simply put my hand up and stopped the door. She screamed that I had hurt her wrist. Most of the violence happened between the 2nd and 5th years we were together. After that, she never tried to hit me. Story 29. Abuse I experienced from my first and only ex. We were together from 16 to 19. I was slapped by my ex in a school hallway over something trivial. I didn't report it. I was pinched frequently when I didn't comply with her demands. She put trackers on my phone so she could monitor my location, battery percentage, phone status, and speed. When she came to my house, she would take my phone, and I wasn't allowed to have it. At school events and games, I wasn't allowed to look at the cheerleaders. If I did, I was accused of cheating. I had to tell her everything I was doing. I was accused of cheating with my cousins, godmother, and grandmother. I woke up to her touching me inappropriately. Her family referred to me with racial slurs. I was falsely accused of having black powers. She accused me of sexually assaulting her. She pretended to be pregnant several times. She frequently called me a derogatory name. When my dad died, she didn't support me and manipulated me. She accessed my computer and deleted files, thinking it was funny. I wasn't allowed to watch certain TV shows or movies. I was watching The Temptations and singing along when she snatched the remote from me and turned it off. I wasn't allowed to hold the remote. When we started dating, I had close to 300 friends on social media. By the time we broke up, I had only 88 left. I had to go to bed and wake up when she did, and I had to keep my phone on video chat with her while we slept. While video chatting, I had to keep my phone on mute and text her so her stepfather wouldn't get angry. She broke up with me because of my skin color to please her stepfather. She cheated on me. When my uncle died, she didn't support me. Instead, she made fun of me and called me names. I was often called derogatory terms. I felt like I could never do anything right. Her mother called me after my ex left me, asking repeatedly for financial help. I was accused of cheating with her mother and of wanting her sister, who was 13 at the time. She abused my dogs by kicking them and spraying them with air fresheners. She insulted my deceased grandmother, whom I never met. She threatened to starve herself the first time I tried to leave. She threatened self-harm when I tried to leave her again. She bombarded my phone with over 100 calls and texts, and my mother, godmother, and grandmother received many messages as well. This happened from 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. I endured all of this, trying my best. I wasn't perfect by any means. Eventually, I became emotionally detached. We dated twice, and by the end, I had completely checked out. Story 30. My friend had a girlfriend who often hit him on the shoulder. He didn't think much of it until she threatened him with a knife. Story 31. You are foolish to think that you can defend yourself from a violent woman. If you defend yourself, you will end up in jail. It is better to run away. Story 32. This also relates to abusive mothers with non-abusive fathers. If my parents ever broke up, my father would not have received custody, even though my mother was abusive. That is likely the reason they did not get divorced, to be honest. Story 33. I have been approached in bars by women who became upset when I politely explained that I was at the bar to spend time alone reading a book, not to meet people. Twice, I had to involve the staff. Once, the bartender asked what I expected him to do, and I replied to do what he would do if a man refused to accept that a woman didn't want to talk to him and became verbally aggressive. His response was to leave me alone and walk away. Story 34. It started as verbal abuse and name-calling, eventually escalating to her hitting me when she was drunk. I yelled at her to stop and then left. I continued to date her for a few more months, then happily broke up with her before leaving for graduate school. I should have left immediately after she hit me the first time. Story 35. I had a girlfriend who had anger issues, but she was really good at hiding them. Until one day she snapped. She started slapping me, then punching me, and finally broke a plate over my head. All because I didn't want to take her out to eat since I was planning for us to cook something together. People have issues. It doesn't matter what gender they are. Story 36. Oh boy, I have a story for you. The night the tsunami in Japan occurred, which destroyed the nuclear plant about 13 years ago, my ex-wife locked me out of our bedroom because she thought I was talking to a girl on the phone. In reality, it was my male friend calling me about what was happening over there. I had work the next day, so I needed to get back in the room to sleep. She didn't let me in. After a couple of hours, she finally opened the door and asked if I was cheating with a girl I worked with, which I wasn't. She then started to hit me and scream that I was cheating. While remaining completely calm, I tried to pack my things to go sleep at my workplace, a conference center with hotel rooms. As I was packing, she pulled everything out of my bag. I put my guitar in a vase until she ripped the hard case in half and hit my guitar against the wall. I then grabbed my guitar and gently placed my hand on her chest to pull it away. That was literally it. I just pulled my guitar away from her. She then fell to the ground and screamed that I shoved her and was going to call the police. She ran into the bathroom with the phone. Since I hadn't actually done anything and the police would likely believe her over me, I made the split-second decision to unplug the phone, grab all my things as fast as I could, and leave until I saw that my car keys were gone. She had locked herself in the bathroom with them. I was trapped. She continued screaming false accusations for the neighbors to hear while I was just trying to get away from her before the situation escalated further. This whole thing could have been avoided, but she is completely unstable. To add to the situation, that was the night we conceived, and now I'm bound to her until my child turns 18. She went on to cheat on me a year later. We got a divorce, and she denied me visitation to see my child. After that, I joined the Marine Corps because I was absolutely miserable. I was out in the desert for 6 weeks doing training when she scheduled a child support hearing that I couldn't attend. They estimated my income and cut my paychecks down to $200 every 2 weeks, while she was going to Disneyland all the time with my child, which I can't be too bitter about. If there is anyone in this world whom I have a burning hatred for, it is her. Can't live with them. Can't live without them. Story 37. Years ago, I was managing a friend's restaurant when a new employee, who had been working there for about 2 weeks, had a confrontation with his girlfriend. She came to our establishment and aggressively pursued him. Despite our attempts to ask her to leave, she ignored us, prompting us to call the police. The employee was terrified when we informed her that the police were on the way, as he had been previously arrested due to her accusations. When the police arrived, he was placed in handcuffs because she started crying and accused him of attacking her. My friend, frustrated, explained that he called to report her trespassing and assaulting his employee. The police were initially skeptical until we showed them the security footage. After viewing the videos, they uncuffed the employee and instructed her to leave. The poor guy apologized to everyone before leaving and mentioned that he had been arrested multiple times in the past due to her accusations. She had a history of manipulation, and it was shocking to witness how biased the system can be. In such situations, a man's words often hold little weight. Even with clear evidence, one may still face legal challenges to prove their innocence after experiencing time in jail. Story 38. Given we live in a world of equal rights for all, I say this: if you want to fight like a man, then expect to get hit like a man. Story 39. She was unpredictable and emotional, but she had her strengths. She was attractive, skilled in bed, and a talented cook. As a chef, her former kitchen staff had subjected her to harsh treatment, which may have contributed to her refusal to hire men of a specific zodiac sign. Prolonged exposure to extreme situations likely affected her mental well-being, and her bipolar disorder might have played a role as well. Nevertheless, she was undeniably appealing. Story 40. A girl from my 9th grade class grabbed my hair and spat in my face because I was a nerd. Luckily for her, I was never a violent person, even though I was a teenager. I was the teacher's pet back then, so she was punished by the school. Story 41. I was hit once by a girl when I was a young boy. She wrote me a note in class with 3 choices. I picked the wrong one, which was a kiss on the cheek. I thought I was being polite by starting slow, but I messed that up. She ended up liking another guy in our class, and I stood behind him, moving his arms and poking fun at her liking him. She slapped me once really hard. I didn't say or do anything because I had clearly crossed a line. I just walked away. On the bright side, that is the only time I've ever been slapped by a girl, so I guess I've learned my lesson. Story 42. I received a few punches from an ex, then started blocking them. She used the bruises on her arms to claim I was violent toward her and got me kicked out of our house by the police, who were not interested in my side of the story. Story 43. I had a woman throw a glass at my face from about 6 feet away. I ducked just in time for it to miss my head and smash against the wall. Could have taken my eye out. Afterwards, she said it was my fault because she felt I was annoying her. Thankfully, I have since divorced her. Story 44. I had the misfortune of dating someone who wasn't violent when sober. She did become violent when drunk and, unfortunately, aggressive. That didn't last, and it took me a long time to put myself together. I tried reporting her to the police but got nowhere. They didn't even want to talk to me. Story 45. I had a tough experience with my first girlfriend when I was 20 and broke up with her. There was nothing I could do while sitting on the couch but cover my head and brace for impact until she was exhausted. Years later, she found me on Facebook and apologized. However, I have never dated anyone with bipolar disorder since, nor do I plan to again. What a challenging experience that was. Story 46. All the men I know have been victims of domestic violence. We just don't share the same cultural perception of it, so we aren't permitted to consider it traumatic. Story 47. In the summer of 2017, my wife, our 3 children, and I moved into a tent on my parents' property. It was not an ideal living situation, and everyone was very stressed. My wife took the children into the tent, upset because we were broke and couldn't even drive to the park, and I had not yet started working. She didn't want me in the tent, and I insisted on entering. We began arguing and punches were thrown. I landed one on her ear, damaging her eardrum. She retaliated with a few punches and attempted to choke me out, unsuccessfully, with her legs. When I tried to get her off me, she bit my finger and then left with the children. She went to the police station, and officers showed up at our home. I didn't realize until they asked to lift my shirt that she had scratched my back significantly. She was arrested, spent 3 days in jail, discovered she was pregnant, received a restraining order, and was served divorce papers, which I later canceled. I think that experience frightened her into reconsidering her choices. We are technically still married, but we sleep in different rooms and haven't seen each other naked for over 3 years. Story 48. All of the comments are why I will be installing the most robust home CCTV system in my dwelling. I want every angle possible in no less than 1440p and all the audio. Story 49. I have had phones and shoes thrown at me because I called them out on their behavior during an argument. This must stop, and women need to start holding other women accountable. Story 50. I believe every man has experienced being hit or slapped by women trying to control their behavior. There are popular television shows, movies, and songs that celebrate this. Some women may condone domestic violence when it benefits them. Story 51. We were walking through the woods when I said something she didn't like. She quickly bent down, grabbed a rock, and threw it at me with full force, hitting me in the shin. She was a baseball player, so it was a good throw, and it really hurt. I didn't break up with her then because I was young and foolish, and our intimate moments were great. Story 52. Among them, there are many individuals who consider it normal to shout at a person, blame them, or hit them. Story 53. I used to be my ex-wife's punching bag for years. She would punch, slap, scratch, pull my hair, and kick me, until the day I had enough and told her she should not do that again. She got cocky and asked, "Or what?" and hit me again, so I hit her back. She never laid a hand on me out of anger again. Story 54. It's the challenge of getting punched back because they thrive on the thrill of the fight for me. She would get so mad that I would just walk out and drive away. If only she knew how badly she would have needed plastic surgery on her face if I had swung back just once. Story 55. Nothing happened. Some women have always been violent toward men. They do this because they assume men will not hit them back, as society has taught men not to hit women. It's actually not that uncommon. Story 56. I'm a calm person, but I will never let anyone put their hands on me. I don't care if you are a woman. That might mean you will end up in a lot of trouble. Not much makes me lose my temper, but when people are aggressive with me, it ignites a fire in my soul. Story 57. I have raised my voice in anger maybe twice during arguments with people I've dated in the last 10 years. As soon as they pointed it out, I lowered it and worked on keeping it low. About 8 months into my most recent relationship, someone who I thought was the most amazing woman I had ever met and would have given anything for, hit me with a broom during an argument. Never once did I make any aggressive moves toward her or raise my voice. In fact, I was actively trying to leave the house because of the argument, which was absolutely ridiculous and shouldn't have happened in the first place. Looking back, the relationship started with her yelling or withdrawing, saying she wasn't going to come over that weekend, but then getting upset when I made plans to go out with friends instead. It turned into name-calling, such as calling me an asshole and selfish prick, and telling me to go mess myself. She went through my phone and social media. Although it happened slowly and infrequently at first, I thought it might stop eventually. By the time it progressed to arguing every week, it just felt like the new normal. There is still a significant stigma regarding men being abused, and I hate it. The moment I talk about it, I mostly get responses like, "I wonder what her side of the story is." On top of that, she would stalk some of the abuse-related online communities looking for posts for me to see if I was talking negatively about her. No matter how many times I deleted my account, she would find the new one until I finally just gave up discussing it completely and buried it down with the rest of the issues. Story 58. Nearly all of my relationships have led to ex-girlfriends becoming physically abusive, at which point they were given 3 strikes, then I was out. Honestly, I don't blame them because I had started to fall out of love and neglect them. I accept responsibility for that. I should have ended it earlier, which I'm sure they were aware of. Equality usually only favors those perceived as weaker, since they need more protection. Clearly, this is not always the situation, but men will rarely claim to be victims for a number of reasons. The number of unreported domestic abuse cases is already shockingly high, especially for men. Story 59. I think I've mentioned this before, but I was walking home after a night out with a girl I'd been seeing for a while, and we were having a silly argument. It escalated into a shouting match at one point, and she ended up slapping me. I looked at her and said something like, "Seriously?" Then I turned around and kept walking home. I might have punched a junction box a bit later and bruised my hand. We got married a few years later and divorced after 2 years. I do not recommend this experience. Story 60. Mom was quite violent behind closed doors. You would never know it if you didn't live there. I have seen many women become threatening and violent in the real world too, although thankfully not directed at me. I know the statistics would not support any claim that women are as violent as men, but anecdotally, I have observed just as much evidence of it. The difference in most circumstances was that when I saw a man become violent, it was taken very seriously, as it should be, but for female attackers, there were no social or criminal consequences whatsoever. Story 61. Many people do not realize that nearly as many men are abused by women as women are abused by men. Story 62. The level of disrespect someone must have to believe they have the right to physically assault another person is unbelievable. They probably have never seriously dealt with domestic violence or faced consequences for their actions. Having dealt with physically abusive individuals, I know I would never stand a chance in a physical confrontation. I keep my hands to myself out of respect for others, based on my experience and empathy, and also for self-preservation. People who resort to violence are emotionally stunted, immature, and lacking in character. We should stop entertaining such individuals and instead embrace those who demonstrate good morals, values, and aspirations. Story 63. I feel like some women get away with bad behavior like this because they aren't considered a threat to safety, or it's downplayed because women aren't thought of as strong. This is probably the same reason we see violent and aggressive men judged much harsher for that behavior and called out on it quickly. I've seen videos that show the different reactions people have to a woman hitting a man versus a man hitting a woman, and there is often little to no reaction to the woman attacking the man. This is the same reason male domestic abuse victims aren't taken as seriously. People have a hard time believing that men can't defend themselves from a woman. It's an unjust mindset that needs to be changed. Women are just as capable of being aggressive and abusive, and that behavior shouldn't be tolerated just because they are women. Story 64. I have experienced conflict with several women I have dated. I often attributed this to my sharp tongue and their unfamiliarity with criticism. Story 65. Jesus. This is unacceptable. I believe that in my country, we have domestic violence services available for men as well. Story 66. Society tolerates violence against men yet portrays them as the perpetrators. I don't think I know a single man who hasn't been assaulted in some way by a woman, yet I don't know a single man who has attacked a woman. I do know plenty who have lost their children, livelihoods, and freedom due to false allegations. Male domestic violence victims often can't even report violence against them. In Australia, they are typically told to act like a man, grow up, and may receive comments such as, "So you're not getting any tonight then," leading to ridicule at the police station. I know this from those who have tried to seek help. Story 67. Brother, I have also been harmed by women. It is something that is generally accepted unless you are willing to call the police, and everyone knows you will be the one going to jail in that situation. Story 68. Hitting and abuse are serious boundaries for me. If someone I am dating hits me, the relationship is over. There will be no talking or rationalization. It is simply over. Story 69. I feel like many men experience this but don't want to come across as weak, so they don't say anything or believe it won't happen again. Girls can be abusers too, and I think some of them are the worst kind of abusers. Story 70. I had an ex who drove her stepfather's car. We went to the mall and she was driving. We had a minor argument, and while I was talking with my hands, I accidentally knocked over a cup of fruit punch. Nothing was stained, but she overreacted, got out of the car, came over to the passenger side, and hit me in the mouth. She was quite short. Story 71. I had a deep cut on my forearm when I told her I wasn't going to take her back. Luckily, I was in college during finals and had a recording device with me at the time. The blood trail started from the kitchen sink when she admitted that everything happened upstairs. Story 72. I was assaulted by my ex for calling her a derogatory term because she was telling everyone that I was involved in inappropriate behavior. I am not. Story 73. Never had it happen to me personally, but most women are aware of the double standard when it comes to abuse between men and women. Some women take advantage of that. They may provoke you to lay hands on them in some way. My advice to any man is to walk away and not grab, push, or put hands on them in any way unless absolutely necessary, such as in situations involving weapons or multiple attackers. The majority of the public's view is that the man is the aggressor in domestic incidents. As men, keep that in mind and watch for signs early on before escalation occurs. Lastly, some women should understand that there are men who were raised to defend themselves regardless of who attacks them. Funny story. Just 4 years ago, my own mom told me to never just stand there and allow any woman to hit or stab me. She said, "Son, try your best to separate yourself from her twice. But if she comes at you a third time, defend yourself." I'm still a bit shocked she said that. Story 74. My ex-wife suddenly became increasingly violent, to the point of cornering me in the laundry room with a butcher knife. She swung the knife and I pushed back with my foot, but she swung again and cut my leg. I hit her in the mouth as hard as I've ever hit anyone in my life. I received criticism for my actions and sometimes still do. People think I should have let her harm me instead of defending myself. I dismiss every single one of them. Story 75. I think every girlfriend has punched me at least once. One time, I got punched for making eye contact during a situation. I had a drunk woman throw water at me for not buying her a drink. Another woman pushed me to the ground at a bar to steal my hat, along with a few other incidents. Story 76. People often speak without hesitation online, as there are few chances for repercussions. This perception influences women. Traditional gender roles have historically dictated that one should never hit a woman. In the past, these roles also implied that women would act in traditionally feminine ways. However, with the rise of feminism, some women believe that embodying negative traits typically associated with men is the best way to assert their identity. Women are aware that they can act without facing significant consequences, either from their targets or the legal system. Story 77. In my last relationship, she abused me a lot when she drank, both verbally and physically. I never raised a hand against her. I stayed in that relationship for far too long and tried to save it, but it ended, and honestly, I'm glad to be out of it now. I'm still trying to rebuild myself. Story 78. Attacked as a teenager. They beat me until they got bored, then asked their male friend to throw me off a bridge. Story 79. I dated a spirited 19-year-old who assumed I cheated on her and then proceeded to cheat on me. She actually slept with someone else. I broke up with her in a public place, and she punched and slapped me before calling her dad. I didn't retaliate. In a humorous turn of events, her rebound proposed to her, and her dad called me to talk her out of it because he preferred me for her. Story 80. I have never lost a fight, nor have I been thrown beer on or screamed at, only by my mother. I stay clear of drama and bars. I'm a very quiet person who keeps to myself. My circle is small and tight. Some may consider me boring. Story 81. I had my ex repeatedly claw chunks out of my arms because that was the only way to get through to me when I was shutting down emotionally. I was both a gentle person and afraid of her. She would tell me it was my fault. She tried to provoke me into hitting her back, and I knew it didn't matter how much she hit me. If I lifted a finger or left a mark, even in self-defense, I would be labeled the sex offender. So I shut down more and ran away because that was the only way I could think of to protect myself without ruining my life. Abuse of men by women is very real, and I am tired of pretending it is not. I am glad she is my ex-wife now. Story 82. My ex broke my belongings and often pushed and occasionally struck me. She was extremely mentally abusive as well. It's a long, convoluted story of a relationship that boils down to me believing I was doing the right thing by sticking around, ultimately thinking I deserved it all because I felt like a horrible excuse for a person. A decade and thousands of hours of therapy and counseling later, I am still working through the mental wounds and scars she gave me during our nearly 10-year relationship. I will likely never fully recover from her. I just keep developing ways to keep it all under wraps, suffering in silence and solitude, so that someone else doesn't take advantage of my issues and undo all the progress I've made. Story 83. This may prompt some downvotes, but was there a father figure in your life while growing up? I've noticed a pattern among people I know. Those who struggle to handle adversity seem to have been raised by single mothers, while those who can rationalize and make calm, objective decisions often had fathers or father figures. It's just an observation I've made within my circle. Story 84. Thank you all for sharing your stories. I'm truly sorry that any of this happened to you. I had no idea this was so common. I cannot imagine hurting anyone for any reason other than self-defense, and even then I would struggle afterward. My heart hurts for you all. You do not deserve to be treated that way. Story 85. My ex-wife was, and still is, completely toxic, abusive, and controlling. We have been divorced for almost 20 years now. Story 86. Girlfriends hit me while we were parked in her car. Someone called the police, but they said they were told I was hitting her. I don't know if the police were really informed that way or if he was trying to get me to say something. While the officers were searching me, they noticed a bunch of marks on my arm and neck that looked like I had been attacked. I had been attacked, but the marks were from work. Story 87. Calmly explained that it was not acceptable behavior, that growing up with brothers was not an excuse, and if she hit me again, I would leave her. She actually changed. Story 88. My second ex-wife would become confrontational when she was angry, which was often when I was at home. Fortunately, my job required me to be away, so I was only home on weekends and Mondays. Story 89. I have been hurt in relationships by women who have been aggressive toward me, including my first fiancée, who not only physically hurt me but also gaslight me by claiming I did it to myself. I finally married a woman who does not behave that way. Sometimes my wife may playfully push or punch me, but I maintain a zero-tolerance policy. This applies whether we are joking or having a disagreement. It may seem boring, but it keeps things safe. Story 90. Only once, long ago, I gave her a look that wiped the "you can't touch me" expression right off her face. She was out of there immediately. As others have noted, they are protected by the system and society. I've heard respectable church members laugh at stories of domestic violence against men. I still remember one incident. They were discussing an elderly couple who had an argument at a family gathering, so they went to another room. Suddenly, they heard a thump followed by a series of smaller thumps. They entered to find the older woman had tripped the frail older man, banging his head into the floor. Most of the people there found it hysterically funny. They didn't even call the police or an ambulance. I asked what they would have done had the roles been reversed. They didn't answer, but the laughter and smiles disappeared. I had little to do with those people after that. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.